So China's propaganda machine is working overtime. And the scary thing is, it's meant to manipulate your ideas, your attitudes, and your support of some of the big changes taking place here in the United States. Crazy as that may sound, we're constantly, in some way, shape, or form, being manipulated. The question is, how's China manipulating you? China's global propaganda machine is fast, it's smart, and it's working overtime. And the fact is, China doesn't want any credit for it. As a matter of fact, they would prefer it to be very, very covert. The fact that you don't even realize it's happening, it means it's already working on you. The U.S. is really struggling to get a handle on it because the fact is they're coming up with a narrative in their one China system. The fact is there's one party, there's one message, and the people tend to fall in line with whatever the government says. There is not freedom of speech. There's not a lot of deliberation. There's just the opaque appearance that, hey, one message out of China. And the fact is, the United States is designed much differently. We hold our personal freedoms, our approach, in a completely different understanding about how government's supposed to work. We discuss, we deliberate, we check out the different angles and try to make the best decision going forward. In China, their decisions are already made almost immediately. And they might not be the best decisions. They might not even be well vetted. But the fact is, China is super, super consistent in their messaging. And I'm here to say it affects the way people think. It affects the way people act. And if China wants to put up some guardrails about tariff, they want to put up some guardrails about, hey, what's the U.S. presence in the Pacific Ocean looking like? Hey, let's put up some guardrails on rare earth materials. Let's put up some guardrails on you need China worse than China needs you. Well, those are things coming right out of the propaganda machine. That's what I want you to pay attention to. And let's face it, folks, if you've seen segments where you don't even realize that China is trying to manipulate you, well, I'm here to say that's powerful. And if you do realize maybe there's a subtle way to try to twist and manipulate the way you think, that's a powerful insight as well, because you actually become cognizant. I've got to tell you, I put out a couple of videos last week, and one in particular had all kinds of people from China, and I'm telling you, they were Chinese people who were part of the communist messaging over there, telling me that everything that I brought up, well, I'm wrong, I don't know what I'm talking about, etc. And the fact is, either they're brainwashed, which I guess they could be, or maybe more importantly, they're trying to twist and manipulate our thinking. And when you do that, the enemy wins. Where is China targeting the West? I'm glad that you asked, because the fact is, social media influence is one of the places they are doing business, and people don't even recognize it. Think about it for a moment. Think about some of the TikTok trends, anti-U.S. economic sentiment that's already out there. And you might say, well, that's just U.S. politics. I'd be really careful about that, because beyond that, we don't know who some of these creators are. We don't know who those sources are, but they throw a lot of things into the wind. And what they do is they really confuse our messaging here in the United States. The fact is, we do need some kind of tariff support. The truth is, we do need to get our budget under control. The truth is that I think the president's trying to do his best job. While I don't agree with all of the policies, nor all of the rhetoric, the fact is, our system allows free thinking, but also we've got to be super, super aware that we are not undermining what's in the best interest of the United States and the best interest of the West. Heck, the best interest of Canada, the best interest of Great Britain. You get the point. We want to make sure that we have a better approach, because I think what China would love to do is manipulate and twist your thinking where you're only worried about you. And what happens in the process? We completely destroy all these amazing alliances that we've built up over the past 100 years. That's something to pay attention to. I also want you to be aware of the role China plays inside of academia. Now, we're talking about universities, big universities, small universities, but in specific terms, we're talking about some of the different endowments and research funding that's taking place. The fact is, when there are, quote, partnerships, we better make sure we know who those partnerships are with. Also, we want to know what the end game is, because the fact is, if American universities are desperate for money, which many of them are, we know that the research people inside of those universities are doing a ton of heavy lifting, and they don't always realize the commercial value of what they're putting together. Likewise, I want to make sure that we understand that some of this Chinese-based research have some of their own people on the inside doing that research, and whatever research is being done here inside of the United States oftentimes is taken over to China in cases of like corporate espionage, and sometimes it doesn't even have to be espionage. Sometimes it's just freely shared for the betterment of the Chinese people. So be aware of that, because it's a very real thing going on. I'd also be really super aware of the fact that there's a ton of investing going on here in the United States by Chinese shell organizations. Whether it's agriculture, whether it's technical research, whether it's scientific and medical research, the fact is these things are real and they're happening. Check out a couple of these stories right here, and I think it's telling you the story that you really do need to be aware of, you need to hear, and most of all, that you get really clear on the messaging, because once again, we live in the age of information overload, and getting clear on the information that's being delivered to you and really being aware of what they're trying to do to the way you think and the way you act, that's a powerful piece, and that, folks, is propaganda. So the Hoover Institute, which is one of the think tanks out there, really has a powerful, powerful insight, and I think this should really resonate with the viewers here, because the fact is, China's propaganda aims to shape global narratives, and I want to make sure we understand this. China is once again shaping global narratives, not just to defend its actions. So with that, know that they have much deeper interest in gaming our system. The tools of the narrative warfare of propaganda, just to make sure you're really, really clear. Once again, Propaganda 101, it's repetition and volume. And the fact is that you hear a story enough, you start to accept it as the truth. And the fact is that truth could be a lie, but it keeps on getting repeated so often that people start believing it. Maybe you can relate to that. And maybe you've seen this enough where, hey, I got a sophisticated viewer that watches this channel. And the fact is, when you become aware of that, you're like, hey, maybe you got a point here. The next thing, check this out. How about targeting our youth? Listen, folks, I am not the conspiracy theorist in the least bit, but I do want you to be aware that our youth quite often can be divided by hearing these different opinions. Maybe they think that the adult world is wrong, the youth world is right. Nobody would ever do that on TikTok, but the fact is, these are very, very real things. And just think about what happened during COVID and the impact it had on some of our youth. Heck, the impact it has on some of our adults. And, of course, the ongoing anxiety, and not to mention narratives, seeds that were planted, and the narratives that have come out of that. I'm just saying these are very, very real things that we all need to be aware of. And the biggest battle we fight, I remember at every video, is the one between our ears, right? So with that, let's check out another thing here to take a deeper dive into. China likes to come across as some kind of a democratic future with the BRIC nations. And the BRICS, once again, of course, we're talking about Brazil, Russia, we're talking about India, we're talking about China, and they're really being sold a false bill of goods about the democratic future of the BRICS, but boy, there sure seems to be a lot of authoritarian leadership in at least two of those countries. So I want you to be aware of that. And on top of that, China really does flood our platforms with a narrative that America is declining type of content. And I'm here to tell you that's a false narrative. But they're trying to do these things to undermine your confidence, to undermine your motivation, and most of all, undermine what you think about your own country and find a way to be unhappy, which is kind of a crazy thought. If you found today's video interesting, I'm not done. I've got this last section here that I think is going to blow your socks off. But I do want to remind you, make sure you're leaving comments below and you're hitting like and hitting subscribe so I continue to provide meaningful information. I do hit a couple different themes on this channel, but this one is one that's really going to gain a lot of attention. I know that already, but I also approach different angles here that isn't necessarily covered inside the mainstream media, and I just want to make sure we're paying attention to this last section because it really means a ton, because I do want you to be very, very aware of some of the things that are out there. For instance, when you hear the phrase that the U.S. is in decline or China is just for peace, well, I'm here to say that there's much more to it, right? If they call de-dollarization as, well, we don't want to use the U.S. dollar, it's not liberation. What it is, it's a way to manipulate the currency systems inside the United States. Maybe you hear some other phrases like state-driven influencers, for instance, doing things like gurus selling us a new world order. No thanks, not interested. And finally, misinformation oftentimes is dressed as some kind of a political commentary, when in all reality, it does something else. It's anti-American rhetoric. And maybe it undermines a political candidate, maybe it undermines Congress, maybe it undermines our government. But the fact is, that government serves the Constitution, and that Constitution serves the Declaration of Independence. And I want to remind you, we hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal. They're endowed by their Creator with certain inalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, and that governments are instituted to protect those rights. And with that, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for watching. Remember, the biggest battle we're fighting, hit like, hit subscribe so I can continue to deliver meaningful content to your inbox on a daily basis. And remember, folks, celebrate your victories and stay healthy.